0 The next day, after a night of dormancy, the Black-Scale mercenary group was finally ready to set off. They were led by Mu Lin and the other 3 deputy commanders. A group of more than 30 people departed from the Black-Scale mercenary group in a grandiose manner. Under the gazes of everyone in the Black Sand Castle, they walked out of the castle. The leader of the group, Mu Lin, was dressed in the same black robe as the members of the Black-Scale mercenary group behind him. The former had a cold expression on his face. Under the black robe, his fingers gently caressed the storage ring he was wearing. It contained the fire element heavenly cores that he had bought yesterday. The other 4 Black Sand Castles were in the hands of the Black Sand Castle's lord, the Liu family's lord, and the actual owner of the auction hall. While Mu Lin and the others were walking out of the castle, inside Black Sand Castle, there were also many strong men with ulterior motives who quietly followed behind them. They were trying to get a share of the profits when the Black-Scale mercenary group used all their strength to fight the Emperor Cultivation Heavenly Beast. Has it started? Xiao Yan, who was resting in a hotel with his eyes closed, had an idea. The monarch flame in his body had a slight change. Under his sharp senses, the flame mark that was marked on the fire heavenly core had a slight change. Sensing Mu Lin's actions, Xiao Yan laughed lightly. With a calm expression, he walked out of the hotel and quietly followed after him. Liu family. In a luxurious hall, a middle-aged man who was sipping tea heard the servant's report and nodded expressionlessly. He pondered for a moment and said, "Go and call second brother over. Tell him that I have something to talk to him about." After the servant withdrew, the teacup in the middle-aged man's hand shattered with a loud bang. The boiling hot tea that had yet to land on his clothes had already turned into steam and dissipated. The heaviness in his eyes instantly turned into excitement. His finger repeatedly rubbed the storage ring that he was wearing. His expression was also not as calm as before. "Big brother, Mu Lin has set off." Not long later, the second brother of the Liu family, Liu Feng, walked in with a joyful expression. Looking at his face, it was the middle-aged man who had represented the Liu family in the auction hall. Liu Zhen nodded his head solemnly. His 5 fingers, which were wearing the storage ring, slowly clenched. A soul-stirring light suddenly burst out from his eyes. The corner of his mouth drew a ferocious arc as he said, "Let's go." Mu Lin walked at the front of the group. His eyes swept behind him without leaving a trace. Not far behind him were a few people who seemed to have walked out of the fortress unintentionally. In some hidden places, it was unknown how many people were following them. Mu Lin coldly harumphed, but his pace was still neither fast nor slow, as if he was trying to lure all the people of Black Sand Castle out. On the other side, when Xiao Yan arrived at a corner not far from the Black-Scale mercenary group, he bumped into all the people from the Black-Scale mercenary group who had gone out to hunt Emperor Cultivations. Xiao Yan frowned slightly. He carefully looked at the leader, Mu Lin. Although his behavior was similar to Mu Lin's, Xiao Yan could not feel the fluctuation of the monarch flame in his body. In other words, Mu Lin did not have any fire heavenly core on him. Mu Lin and the others walked further and further away. Xiao Yan wasn't sure if he should follow them or not. Logically speaking, as an important item to open the Emperor Cultivation treasure, Mu Lin wouldn't be at ease handing it over to anyone. Furthermore, Xiao Yan was confident that Mu Lin wouldn't discover the trace of fire seed left on the heavenly core. Just as Xiao Yan was hesitating, 2 black shadows suddenly flashed in front of the Black-Scale mercenary group. Looking at the empty street, 2 black shadows quickly flashed and rushed towards the other side of the Black Sand Castle. The moment the black shadows appeared, Xiao Yan immediately felt a restless feeling from the monarch flame in his body. As the 2 black shadows left, the fluctuation of the monarch flame in his body also trembled. "What a good move, Golden Cicada shedding shell." Xiao Yan was instantly delighted. All his doubts were easily solved. One of the 2 black shadows was the real Mu Lin. The group of people just now was just trying to lure all those who had ill intentions towards the Black-Scale mercenary group. Xiao Yan laughed softly. The monarch flame slowly covered the surface of his body, completely concealing his aura. After which, his body moved and caught up with the 2 black figures from afar. Most of the people walking in Black Sand Castle were wearing black robes. Therefore, Mu Lin and his companions' attire did not attract anyone's attention. They swaggered out of the south gate. Xiao Yan, who was not far away, naturally had no scruples. Intentionally or unintentionally, he followed Mu Lin and his companion and swaggered out as well. After leaving the Black Sand Castle, it was a vast plain that could not be seen. At the end of the line of sight, there were endless mountain ranges that extended like a huge dragon, bringing about a shocking visual effect. On the plain, there were jagged rocks. Huge rocks that were as tall as a person were scattered all over the plain, making it perfect for Xiao Yan to hide. With the sensing of the monarch flame, Xiao Yan was not afraid of losing Mu Lin. After leaving Black Sand Castle, Xiao Yan deliberately maintained a distance from Mu Lin. With the cover of the huge rocks, even Mu Lin, who had been observing the surroundings, did not discover Xiao Yan. On the plain, the wind was howling from time to time. The sandstorm was blowing against their faces, making it very easy for them to lose their direction. After following Mu Lin for an unknown number of times, a few figures were standing beside a sand dune that was covered in huge rocks. When Mu Lin saw these people, he ripped off his black robe. The black-robed man beside him also took off his black robe, revealing his true appearance. He was the third leader of Black-Scale Mercenary Group, and his strength had also reached the peak of Monarch King. Xiao Yan saw them from afar, but he didn't dare to act rashly. After all, they had 5 Monarch Emperor-level expert. If they were discovered, they could only flee in a sorry state. Captain Mu, you came a little late. The Lu family's patriarch, Lao Zhen, wore a white brocade robe and had white sideburns. He looked at Mu Lin, who had arrived late, and said with a strange smile, "Stop farting. How many people in Black Sand Castle are staring at the wind released by the black scales this time? If you don't divert their attention, will you be able to come out smoothly?" Mu Lin walked forward and looked coldly at Lao Zhen. He said in an unpleasant tone, "If it wasn't for the Emperor cultivation treasure, he wouldn't have cooperated with this old thing no matter what." Captain Mu is right. In terms of contribution, Captain Mu is the one who contributed the most. A fat old man with a smile on his face interrupted the two men who were arguing with each other, and cupped his hands toward Mu Lin with a smile on his face. "Mu Lin, when you came here, no one followed you, right?" A dignified middle-aged man wearing a silver robe standing next to Lao Zhen suddenly spoke. In his voice, "Kill." Mu Lin looked at the middle-aged man and lightly said, "Don't worry, Castle Lord Su. I've been observing the whole way and no one has been following me." The silver-robed middle-aged man nodded and then looked at the burly man beside him and said, "We can't be careless about this matter. Brother Chen, take out that thing of yours and examine it." The burly man was the Monarch Emperor-level expert that they had invited from other places. He could be considered an old acquaintance of the few people here, and could be considered a person that they could trust together. Otherwise, people would not know what was inside their hearts. These old foxes would definitely not agree to find a fellow with unknown backgrounds to help them. Chen Rong smiled and nodded. With a flip of his palm, a crystal-clear and translucent pearl appeared in his hand. After transmitting some origin monarch cheese into it, some white fog slowly appeared on the pearl. Brother Chen's breath exploring pearl has an effect on detecting the surrounding chi fluctuations. But it's extremely good. Regardless of whether there are people or beasts around, we can detect them. The silver-robed middle-aged man smiled as he looked at Mu Lin and slowly said. When Mu Lin heard this, he frowned and didn't say anything. This old thing spoke with such an imposing manner. Wasn't it just to check if he had secretly brought someone here? Looking at the surrounding people, everyone was expressionless. It seemed that Su Chong had used the same excuse to test them when they had just arrived. Xiao Yan was hiding in the distance. The monarch flame was gathered in his eyes. Although he was very far away, he could still see their movements. When Chen Rong took out a bead, Xiao Yan's heart trembled instinctively. His soul energy involuntarily surged out from between his eyebrows and wrapped around his entire body. His soul energy and the monarch flame were a double protection, covering up his chi. He saw that the white fog in the bead did not dissipate for a long time. Su Chong laughed loudly, and his expression became much friendlier. His eyes swept across Mu Lin, Lao Zhen, and the fat old man. He said, "All right, everyone, take out the heavenly cores in your hands. Prepare to open the treasure of Emperor Cultivation Warriors." Quote, among these people, besides Mu Lin and the other 5 Monarch Emperor-level expert, there was also the second master of Lao family, Lao Zheng, the third commander of Black-Scale Mercenary Group, Li Zhu, and 2 guards brought by Cao Ying, the big boss of auction. All four of them had reached the level of an emperor, which would be beneficial to their treasure hunt. Su Chong immediately took out an earthen yellow heavenly core. The rhombus-shaped heavenly core was glowing brightly, and a yellow light surrounded it, making it look extremely gorgeous. The remaining four people did not say much as they each took out a heavenly core. When all 5 heavenly cores were taken out, the origin monarch cheese in this area began to rotate rapidly. The sound of the wind caused 5 streams of light with different colors to swirl around the heavenly cores. Due to the special influence of this area, 5 streams of light rose from the heavenly cores. It seemed like they were going to entangle with each other. It really is here. Seeing the strange phenomenon of the heavenly core in their hands, everyone was delighted. Without any hesitation, the 5 Monarch Emperor level experts followed the instructions and held onto the heavenly core with both hands. The origin monarch cheese in their bodies surged and flowed through the meridians in their arms into the heavenly core. As the origin monarch cheese were injected into the heavenly cores, the flowing light above the 5 heavenly cores became brighter and brighter, erupting with a powerful deterrent force. 5 different colored flowing lights shot up into the sky and entangled together in midair. The entire sand dune seemed to buzz along with it. Xiao Yan hid in the distance and watched the movements of the 5 people without blinking. Under his sharp soul perception, as the 5 heavenly cores were injected into the balance of the origin monarch cheese, the entire sand dune seemed to resonate. Buzz. In the next moment, the 5-colored light formed by the 5 streams of light suddenly fell into the sand dune. When it came into contact with the sand dune, it suddenly dissipated. After that, an ear-splitting buzzing sound suddenly rang out and the 5 heavenly cores immediately began to rotate rapidly. The moment the heavenly cores began to rotate, the 5 of them withdrew their hands at the same time. The instant the heavenly cores left their hands, the faces of the 5 of them turned pale. They hurriedly withdrew, took out their medicine pills, swallowed them, and began to adjust their breathing. Sizzle, sizzle. The 5 heavenly cores rotated at an increasingly faster speed. At a certain moment, they suddenly stopped. Then, they turned into a stream of light and rushed into the sand dune, raising a cloud of dust and sand. Struggle. The dust and sand dispersed, and a magnificent 5-colored array appeared under the sand dune. The array was in the shape of 5 horns, and each of the 5 horns had a groove on it. In each groove, there was a dazzling heavenly core. At this moment, the energy within the heavenly core was crazily pouring into the crystal core at the center of the pentagon formation. 5 different colored energies were like 5 flowing lights, illuminating Yu. After a moment, the crystal core at the center of the pentagonal grand formation suddenly erupted with a gorgeous luster. At the same time, the heavenly core in the 5 corner grooves also quietly shattered, turning into powder and dissipating. Bang! At the same moment that the 5 heavenly cores disappeared, the crystal core of the grand formation also immediately split apart. A loud rumbling sound was suddenly emitted. In the next moment, the grand formation disappeared, and the ground suddenly caved in. What appeared in front of everyone was a bottomless cave. The treasure location is actually so hidden. There is also a grand array protecting it. This emperor cultivation expert is definitely not someone an ordinary emperor cultivation expert can compare with. After pondering for a while, Su Chong was the first to regain his senses. With a thought, the surface of his body was covered with a thick armor made of origin monarch cheese. With a flash, he jumped into the cave. After him, Chen Rong's reaction was not slow at all. He followed closely behind Su Chong and jumped into the cave. Damn it! Seeing Su Chong and Chen Rong jump into the cave without saying a word, everyone was stunned. Soon after, they reacted. Mu Lin immediately cursed in his heart. A light flashed on his body and he also impatiently jumped down. After Mu Lin jumped down, the 3rd commander, Li Zhu, who followed him, did not dare to delay and hurriedly followed. Second brother, be careful. This tomb will definitely not be simple. Lao Zhen reminded him in a low voice. Although he was anxious, he still had to put his life first. Nodding his head, Lao Zheng did not dare to be careless. Not only did he use the origin monarch chi to form a sovereign chi armor on the surface of his body, he also took out a shield-shaped spirit weapon. The light on the shield circulated, and it was far from ordinary. Seeing that everyone had jumped down, the fat old man, Cao Ying, furrowed his brows. As he was old and experienced, he could vaguely smell the scent of death from this tomb. When he thought about the fact that this tomb belonged to an emperor cultivation warrior from 10,000 years ago, he couldn't help but mutter in his heart. I don't care anymore. I've lived enough in Black Sand Castle these years. I'll go down and take a look. Perhaps I can find the opportunity to break through to the monarch emperor. Clenching his teeth, Cao Ying no longer hesitated. Just as he was about to go down, his eyes suddenly moved. After pondering for a moment, he turned around and said to the two guards, "The two of you follow me down." To be able to witness the tomb of an emperor cultivation warrior, the two of them had never dreamt of it. Immediately, they heard Cao Ying's words. The two guards, who thought that they could only relax for the crowd, were overjoyed and nodded their heads in agreement. After instructing the two guards who had just advanced to the emperor realm, Cao Ying took a deep breath. His fat body moved and he also jumped down. Behind him, the two guards also hurriedly followed. Seeing that everyone was going down, Xiao Yan, who had been carefully hiding behind a huge rock, took a deep breath. After swallowing a medicine pill, his body moved and rushed towards the sand dune not far away. When he arrived at the sand dune, Xiao Yan looked around. The huge rock was towering in a strange way. It looked strange but extremely natural. If there was no accurate map to guide it, no one would notice it. Looking at the bottomless cave under his feet, Xiao Yan no longer hesitated. The monarch flame on his body slowly flowed. The origin chains in his body vibrated. The origin monarch chi that filled his body quickly flowed along his meridians, ready to launch a fatal attack at any time. Facing the tomb of an emperor cultivation warrior, Xiao Yan didn't dare to be careless. After making all the preparations, he carefully jumped down from the cave. On the other side of Black Sand Castle, under the lead of Mu Lin and his team in disguise, they successfully attracted many people with ulterior motives. Therefore, no one noticed the silent departure of the Lu family patriarch and the Black Sand Castle lord. Following the group of people from the Black-Scale mercenary group, they came to a rocky plain. Looking from afar, the leader of the group, Mu Lin, raised his hand. More than 30 members of the mercenary corps just sat down and rested as if no one else was present. It was as if they didn't care about the battle with Emperor Cultivation Heavenly Beast. This behavior made many people who were observing in the dark feel strange. However, since the people of Black-Scale mercenary group weren't in a hurry, they weren't in a hurry either. In any case, when the time came, the snipe and the clam would fight each other, and the fisherman would be the one who would benefit in the end. When Su Chong landed on the ground, he fixed his eyes on the scene. In front of him was a passageway that led to an unknown place. The passageway was extremely wide, and it wouldn't be a problem for the three of them to walk side by side. There were two walls on both sides of the passageway. There was a fire source spirit beast that was said to be indestructible for 10,000 years as a lamp. Although the passageway wasn't very bright, one could still see it clearly. Dong! Chen Rong landed on the ground. When he saw the passage in front of him, he couldn't help but reveal a shocked expression. A tomb of this level could really be opened by an emperor cultivation warrior? The current benefits were all for their own interests. Su Chong wasn't as enthusiastic to Chen Rong as before. Without saying another word, he carefully walked forward. Chen Rong didn't show any neglect as he followed closely behind. A short while later, Mu Lin, Lao Zhen, and Cao Ying landed on the ground one after another. Their eyes swept across this grand tomb before they hurriedly rushed forward. There was no need to be modest in front of benefits. Only the treasure left behind by an emperor cultivation expert was the most valuable thing. One after an unknown amount of time, Xiao Yan finally landed on the ground. He waved his hand and threw the dust into the air. He raised his head and looked up. There was only a hole the size of a sesame seed. There was a glimmer of light in it. Obviously, that was the hole that he had just entered. Seeing such a high distance, Xiao Yan's face suddenly stiffened. How should he get up there at that time? Could it be that he was going to be trapped here? Frowning, Xiao Yan shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He had to finish the most important thing in front of him first, and then think of a way to get out later. Retracting his gaze, Xiao Yan looked at the wide tunnel in front of him, which was illuminated by some light. Looking at it, the passageway seemed to have no end. Under the dim light, the passageway appeared extremely strange. In such an environment, not only did he have to be careful not to be discovered by the people in front of him, but he also had to pay attention to the danger that could appear in the tomb at any time. Therefore, Xiao Yan didn't dare to be careless and devoted himself to this place. With the help of the monarch flame and his soul energy, he suppressed his aura to the lowest level. At the same time, his sharp eyes kept scanning the surroundings to prevent any abnormal situations from happening. If there was no danger in the tomb of an emperor cultivation warrior, Xiao Yan wouldn't believe it no matter what he said. After all, he had experienced too many things in the lower realm. Obtaining something without doing anything was just a pipe dream. Even though the passageway was spacious, under the dim lights, it was extremely deep. Even though some light footsteps were far away, in this quiet place, it was exceptionally clear. Xiao Yan did not dare to be careless. The origin monarch qi in his body slowly flowed through his meridians. The origin chains also made a rustling sound as it continuously released the origin monarch qi, allowing Xiao Yan to unleash his strongest attack at any time. After calming his heart, Xiao Yan moved his body slightly and quietly walked forward. This place was filled with danger, and the few people in front of him could be used as a stepping stone. As for whether they could obtain the treasure if they were late, Xiao Yan wasn't worried at all. None of these people were easy to deal with. As someone who had been living in Black Sand Castle for many years, each of them had a meticulous mind. Although the 5 of them had abandoned their past grudges and joined hands to open the tomb, if they found the treasure, they wouldn't let it go until they bled. That would be Xiao Yan's chance. Arg! While Xiao Yan was quietly advancing, he suddenly heard a miserable cry of pain coming from a far distance. The moment the sound was heard, it stopped abruptly, followed by a heavy death qi and silence. Sure enough, it has sunk in. Upon hearing this sound, Xiao Yan's expression changed. Judging from the sound, it didn't seem like Mu Lin, but it could be Lao Zhen, Mu Lin, or Cao Ying and the other 2 behind him. He didn't know which unlucky guy accidentally touched the mechanism. Su Chong, who was advancing carefully, heard a miserable cry coming from a distance behind him. He couldn't help but reveal a cold smile. Sure enough, someone had fallen into the trap. In a place like this, if there was one less opponent, his chances would be higher. In his eyes, other than Chen Rong and Lao Zhen, no one else was worth mentioning. After hearing only one miserable cry, Su Chong couldn't help but shake his head. Judging from the sound, it should be one of Cao Ying's 2 guards. Obscurely looking at the trace of blood on his right shoulder, Su Chong also snorted. He didn't expect Mu Lin and Lao Zhen to charge in safely. The destructive power of that mechanism was just too weak. However, he was passing through that mechanism. At that time, he was actually injured a little. He was really careless. Mu Lin, who was not far from Su Chong, wiped the blood off his face. Hearing the miserable cry, he stopped and turned around to look. He gritted his teeth and said, "Why isn't it Cao Ying, that old man, and Lao Zhen? They are not injured either." The 3rd commander, Li Zhu, was also injured. He recalled the crisis he had encountered just now and could not help but sigh. He had seen Su Chong and Lao Zhen passing through the mechanism just now. He was already mentally prepared, but he was still injured and almost could not get out. "Why isn't there any death?" Lao Zhen sneered when he heard the miserable cry. He didn't even turn his head and ran forward. Lao Zheng, who was behind him, was still holding the shield that was flowing with spiritual light. The shield was already damaged, but neither of them was injured. Cao Ying's face was pale as he looked at the mechanism in front of him. His eyes were fixed on the dead body. One of the guards, who was covered in a basket full of blood, couldn't help but swallow his saliva. Even though he had made sufficient preparations after passing through this trap path, he had almost been injured. If not for the fact that he had used this guard as a shield in an instant, he would be the one lying on the ground. "Let's go." Clenching his teeth, Cao Ying no longer hesitated. To be able to become the boss of the auction house in Black Sand Castle, his disposition was not simple. Since he had already come down, there was no turning back. He could only charge forward and have a chance to live. After saying those words, Cao Ying did not even bother to look at the miserable corpse of the guard lying in a pool of blood. His fat body moved and rushed forward. The remaining guard behind him did not dare to delay and hurriedly followed. "This is the mechanism path?" Around 5 to 6 minutes after Cao Ying left, Xiao Yan quietly arrived at this place. He looked at a tunnel that was about 10 meters long in front of him. The walls on both sides of the tunnel were filled with dense holes. A miserable-looking man fell to the ground. His body was full of bloody holes, as if he had been struck by countless stones. Could it be something shot out from the holes on both sides? Looking at the ashes that were nearly 1 inch thick on the ground, Xiao Yan squatted down and rubbed some of them with his fingers. There was a bit of curiosity on his forehead. This feeling was definitely not some stone debris. In Xiao Yan's perception, it seemed more like a medicine pill that had turned into ashes. Such a thick layer of ashes, how many medicine pills do I need to accumulate? Could it be that this emperor cultivation expert is an alchemist? Thinking of this, Xiao Yan's expression changed. There was a high chance that he was an alchemist. Otherwise, even an ordinary monarch cultivation warrior wouldn't be so extravagant as to use medicine pills to stop the intruders. It seems like it's impossible to force our way in. Otherwise, we would be turned into sieves by the medicine pills shot out from the holes. We can't cause too much of a commotion. Since that's the case, Xiao Yan pondered for a moment and gave up on the idea of forcing his way in. His eyes moved and looked at the dead guard in the middle of the passageway. After which, he laughed softly and extended both of his hands. The origin monarch chi on his hands surged wildly. In an instant, it had already gathered an incomparably dense sovereign chi. Xiao Yan shouted at the corpse in the middle of the passageway. The suction force on his hands suddenly increased. Under the pulling force of the origin monarch chi, the corpse slowly moved towards Xiao Yan. Under normal circumstances, with Xiao Yan's strength, even if he used the heavenly monarch fire-burning body, the suction force would be insignificant to an emperor. But now, the latter was already dead. The origin monarch chi in his body had already disappeared, leaving only his body. Naturally, he could easily absorb it. After removing the dead person, Xiao Yan took a deep breath. He extended his left arm and easily lifted the former up. Then, with a flip of his right hand, the blue flame ruler appeared in his hand. Xiao Yan used the corpse and blue flame ruler to block both sides of his body. After the surface of his body was covered with Xiao Yan's, he stepped onto the mechanism without any hesitation. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. As soon as he stepped onto this special passageway, red medicine pills shot out from the 2 holes on both sides. Like a violent storm, they attacked him. The medicine pill was so dense that it could not be blown through the air. As it shot out, the wind quickly eroded, and after hitting Xiao Yan's 2 sides of the defense, there was no longer any strength left. When it fell to the ground, it instantly turned into ashes. These medicine pills had existed for tens of thousands of years by relying on special holes. Now that they appeared in the air, it only took a few seconds for them to dissipate. About 10 meters away, even though Xiao Yan had the blue flame ruler and the corpse blocking his way, he still felt that it was difficult for him to walk smoothly. Under the bombardment of countless medicine pills, Xiao Yan felt as if he was a small boat in a surging ocean that could be overturned at any time. The medicine pills hit the blue flame ruler, but he did not feel anything. However, when the Xiao Yan's hit the corpse on his left hand, Xiao Yan could even hear the sound of the medicine pills piercing through the corpse. About 10 meters away, Xiao Yan took about 3 to 4 minutes to walk over. Looking at the corpse on his left hand that was almost like a funnel, Xiao Yan was secretly speechless. Throwing the corpse to the side, Xiao Yan gripped the blue flame ruler tightly with his right hand and quietly followed. This was the only passage in the entire underground tomb, and Xiao Yan wasn't worried about losing a few people. Along the way, he saw a few drops of blood on the ground. It seemed like someone had been injured by the medicine pill mechanism. However, the strength of these people was still somewhat out of Xiao Yan's expectations. Under such circumstances, there was only one person who had died. In the tomb of this emperor cultivation warrior. Wasn't it too simple? While Xiao Yan was deep in thought, he suddenly frowned and stopped moving. His eyes were fixed on the corner not far away. There was an undetectable black shadow wriggling there. Narrowing his eyes, Xiao Yan held the blue flame ruler in his hand and slowly pointed it in front of him. He said with a cold smile, "You are a dignified monarch emperor-level expert. Is there a need for you to sneak attack me here?" Hearing this, the black shadow let out a soft laugh. He walked out from the shadow at the corner, revealing a fat body. It was Cao Ying, who was walking in front of Xiao Yan. "This little guy's senses are pretty good. My stealth skill is one of the best in Black Sand Castle. I didn't expect to be discovered by a monarch spirit like you." Cao Ying looked at the young man in front of him. His fat face was full of smiles, but his eyes were shining with a strange light. "How did you find me?" Seeing that Cao Ying had no intention of fighting, Xiaoyan also withdrew his blue flame ruler. However, he didn't dare to lower his guard. His eyes were fixed on the young man. If it wasn't for his soul power sensing the abnormality just now, he really wouldn't have found this old man. I should ask you this. Previously, when Su Chong was up there, he used the bead to check the surroundings. There wasn't a single person in the surrounding dozens of miles. Little guy, how did you find it? Cao Ying still had a smile on his face. The fat on his fat face was squeezed to the point that it almost covered his eyes. The only remaining guard was nowhere to be seen. Seeing that Xiaoyan was only smiling coldly, Cao Ying chuckled and said, "It's fine if you don't want to say it. I don't think you are from Lao family or Mu Lin." After a pause, without waiting for Xiaoyan's reply, Cao Ying continued, "I don't think that's possible. Given their personalities, they would rather only they knew about this treasure and ask them to tell them about it. It was absolutely impossible for the others to know about it. No matter how you found it, a mere monarch spirit has some strength to be able to reach this place." After saying that, Cao Ying looked into Xiaoyan's eyes. His small eyes, which had been squeezed by the fat until there was no place left, sparkled with a strange luster. He said slowly, "Why don't we join forces? How about it? Join hands?" Xiaoyan was slightly stunned when he heard these two words. After that, he sneered and said, "What do you mean? I'm just a monarch spirit, including you. There are a total of 5 monarch emperor level experts in here. Even if we work together, we won't be able to change anything." Cao Ying shook his head and said, "You have overestimated them. When the treasure is found, it will be a real war. Humans are evil, and it's even more so here. Everyone has the idea of dominating this place. Once the battle starts, everyone will try their best. If they can bring one more helper with them, they will have a higher chance of winning." Cao Ying pursed his lips and said, "In terms of strength, if we work together, we will definitely be the last fishermen, and we will kill all of them here." At the end of his words, the smile on Cao Ying's face seemed to have turned into a grim smile that belonged to the god of death. When he mentioned killing them, he didn't hesitate at all. Xiaoyan chuckled when he heard that. He stared at Cao Ying and said, "Being a fisherman is also what I thought. However, in your plan, I can't be one of your chess pieces, right?" Cao Ying laughed and said, "Little brother and I don't know each other, and we don't have anything to do with you. Why would I want to harm you? After we take the treasure, we'll go our separate ways. What do you think?" Xiaoyan didn't say anything when he heard this, but he was laughing coldly in his heart. Did he really think that he was some young brat who had yet to experience the world? No benefits involved? What kind of joke was this? In the face of an emperor cultivation warrior's treasure, besides him, the rest of them were his enemies. This was the biggest benefit involved. This damn fatty was obviously lying through his teeth. While thinking this in his heart, Xiaoyan let out a soft laugh on the surface and said, "Since that's the case, we might as well join forces. However, I will hide in the dark and wait for the last moment to attack. As for dealing with them, I will have to trouble you, my lord." After all, stabbing someone in the back is truly frightening. Hearing Xiaoyan's words, an undetectable joy flashed across Cao Ying's eyes. He immediately said, "That's of course. Little brother, just follow me quietly. When the time comes, you must act decisively." He cupped his hands towards Xiaoyan. Cao Ying's fat face was filled with a smile. After which, he turned around and walked forward. Xiaoyan frowned and asked curiously, "You haven't told me how you found me." Cao Ying stopped moving. He chuckled and said, "That guard of mine has my seal on him. Even if he dies, that seal will not disappear. Earlier, I sensed that the sigil had suddenly disappeared, so I guessed that there might be someone following it. That's why I'm waiting here." With a simple and honest smile, Cao Ying's figure quickly disappeared from Xiaoyan's line of sight. Each of these things is more sensitive than the other. Muttering softly, Xiaoyan did not dare to be neglectful. A middle period of alien stage's soul power surged out from between his eyebrows without any reservation, and he was able to sense the surrounding situation. If it wasn't for the fact that he didn't detect Cao Ying's location in time, he would have been able to tell that Cao Ying was a cruel man with a simple and honest smile on his face. Hong Long, Xiaoyan knew that he wouldn't be able to dodge the sneak attack of a monarch emperor. Under the senses of an alien realm soul, Xiaoyan and Cao Ying maintained the same distance. They followed at a moderate pace. No one knew where this winding passage led to, and the dangers ahead were unknown. With these Monarch Emperor-level experts opening the way, it would undoubtedly save Xiao Yan a lot of trouble. Are there no more traps? After walking for an unknown period of time, when Su Chong and Cao Ying carefully walked to the end of the passage, a huge stone cave suddenly appeared in front of them. The stone cave was extremely spacious, enough to accommodate hundreds of people. In the middle of the stone cave, there was a stone platform with a huge cauldron sitting on it. The cauldron was light black in color, and the patterns on it seemed to be carved out of blood. The hidden dragon gave a long roar, and the phoenix danced in the sky. The Tiger Roar Valley was full of lifelike creatures, as if they were real. Even though Su Chong wasn't an alchemist, he could still see the value of the cauldron in the cave with a single glance. The carvings on it were vivid and lifelike, and a deep light flashed. Although it had been 10,000 years, it was still as bright as before. While Su Chong was staring at the huge cauldron, Chen Rong, who was standing beside him, shifted his gaze to the few brocade boxes beside the cauldron. Both of their eyes were shining with greed. This is where the treasure of an Emperor cultivation warrior is hidden. Su Chong took a deep breath. The shock in his eyes gradually dissipated, and he began to plan in his heart. Chen Rong, who was standing beside him, wasn't stupid. He didn't rashly step into the treasure, and just like Su Chong, he was thinking of the most feasible way. At the same time, the origin monarch chi in their bodies were roaring crazily. Under the vibration of the origin chains, large amounts of pure origin monarch chis were emitted from their meridians and gathered in all parts of their bodies to prevent any accidents. The battle had begun here. While Su Chong and Mu Lin were having their own ulterior motives, the two of them quickly rushed over. When they saw that Su Chong and Mu Lin had yet to obtain the treasure, their nervous hearts finally relaxed. Then, they looked into the stone cave and saw the cauldron on the stone platform. They couldn't help but be startled. What kind of joke is this? This pill furnace was left behind by an emperor cultivation? Mu Lin was anxious and couldn't help but curse. In his imagination, the treasures of an emperor cultivation should be piled up like a mountain of monarch crystals, and there should be a huge amount of spirit weapons piled up randomly. However, the only pill furnace in the cave had shattered his imagination. After hearing Mu Lin's furious curses, although Su Chong remained silent, he couldn't help but sneer in his heart. Something that had been kicked in the head by a donkey. This pill furnace was no simple thing. Just by looking at the carvings on the surface of the pill furnace, it was enough to tell that this pill furnace was definitely not an ordinary item. Its value was definitely not below that of a mid-grade heavenly core, or even higher. Don't be anxious, Regiment Commander Mu. Who knows? Who knows? There might be some other secret passage in this cave. Inside, there might be countless monarch crystals inside. There might even be a lot of divine weapons inside. Chen Rong's eyes flickered, and he looked at Mu Lin with a smile. Mu Lin looked at Su Chong and Chen Rong and sneered. Don't treat me like a spear. If there is really something good, will you stop? Chen Rong smiled and did not say anything. Su Chong, who was beside him, thought for a while and said, Commander Mu, it is too much to say. You know, we have been in Black Sand Castle for many years. We have long developed a habit of being cautious. Besides the mechanism in this tomb, we didn't encounter any other traps during the entire process. Therefore, he was worried about the cave, which might be a fatal danger. However, it was also possible that there was no danger at all. I wonder if Leader Mu would dare to take the risk. Su Cheng's tone was indifferent. As he spoke, his eyes were still fixed on the pill furnace on the stone platform. He was also thinking about what to do next. After listening to Su Cheng's words, Mu Lin frowned. He began to hesitate. What Su Chong said was the truth, but being in the tomb of an emperor cultivation warrior still posed a huge risk. Just as Mu Lin was hesitating, he suddenly heard the footsteps of Lao Zhen and Su Chong coming from the corner behind him. Immediately, he gritted his teeth and tossed the hesitation in his heart to the back of his mind. The origin monarch chi in his body surged out wildly, forming a layer of emperor chi armor that could be seen by the naked eye. After which, his body moved and he charged into the stone cave. Before 3rd Company leader Li Zhu could say anything, Mu Lin had already rushed into the stone cave. Lao Zhen and Lao Zheng, who had just arrived, saw Mu Lin enter the cave. Lao Zhen's gaze immediately shifted from Mu Lin to the black pill furnace on the stone platform and the few brocade boxes beside it. No, we can't let that bastard Mu Lin beat us first. Seeing that Su Chong and Chen Rong did not intend to enter the cave immediately, Lao Zhen was confused. Lu Zheng, who was behind him, whispered in his ear and then moved. Before Lao Zhen could stop him, Lao Zheng had already rushed into the cave. Mu Lin carefully entered the cave and stepped onto the ground. The expected danger didn't appear. The entire cave was extremely quiet and lifeless. Mu Lin was overjoyed. This Emperor Cultivation Warrior's tomb was really too easy to break into. He just didn't know if the price of the items inside could be compared to the huge amount of money spent by Black-Scale Mercenary Group to buy the Heavenly Core. He heard the sound of Lao Zheng rushing in from behind. Once he found the treasure of an Emperor Cultivation Warrior, the first thing he wanted to kill would be these two from the Lao family. It would be best if he could get rid of the other 4 Monarch Emperor Warriors here. In this way, he wouldn't be the only one in charge of the Black Sand Castle. Seeing Mu Lin and Lao Zheng walk into the cave safely, Su Chong couldn't help but furrow his brows. Could it be that he was being too cautious? When Chen Rong saw this, he could no longer suppress the greed in his heart. He took a big step forward and was about to reach for the few brocade boxes on the stone platform. Swoosh! Just as Chen Rong's hand was about to touch the brocade boxes, a sound of rushing wind that caused one's expression to change suddenly sounded. Immediately following that, several black gangchis shot out from a bronze coffin tomb behind the stone platform. The gangchis were as fast as lightning as they flew in a disorderly manner in the stone cave. Chen Rong's expression suddenly changed, and he decisively gave up on the brocade box that was right in front of him. With a flash, he left the stone cave in the blink of an eye. In the next moment, a black stellar energy cut through the spot where Chen Rong had been standing. A deep crack appeared on the ground. While Chen Rong was barely dodging, the other few stellar energies had also closed in on Mu Lin and Lao Zheng. The faces of the two who had reacted instantly turned pale. Without any time to think, they quickly used their movement technique, the Monarch skill, and fled out of the cave. Arg! As Xiao Yan was moving forward, he suddenly heard a shrill cry of pain coming from the front. After that, Lao Zhen's roar immediately rang out. Xiao Yan frowned, and the corner of his mouth couldn't help but reveal a trace of a smile. It seemed like the second master of the Lao family had suffered some serious injuries. A joyful thought flashed across his mind. Xiao Yan raised his brows again. Since it was Lao Zheng's voice, it meant that the few people in front of him had already gathered together. There were 4 Monarch Emperor-level expert guarding his body and he was injured. It seemed like the mechanism in front of him was even more dangerous. Thinking of this, Xiao Yan couldn't help but speed up his pace. In front of him, Cao Ying also sped up when he heard Lao Zheng scream. Second brother, Lao Zhen pounced forward and caught Lao Zheng, who had luckily rushed out of the cave. He looked at Lao Zheng's left arm, which had been cut off by the gangchi, and his eyes were filled with anger. His calm expression had long been replaced by ferociousness. Although Lao Zheng had survived, his left arm had been cut off by the gangchis. The pain that pierced into his nerves caused him to feel dizzy. Blood kept flowing out from his broken arm, and he almost fainted. Although Lao Zhen was furious, he still had some rationality. He took out a jade bottle from his storage ring and poured out a handful of white powder. He pressed it on Lao Zheng's broken arm. The explosive pain caused Lao Zheng to let out a miserable cry. Due to the pain, his entire body was trembling, but the blood on his arm had stopped flowing. He held onto the wound on his chest that was so deep that his bones could be seen. Mu Lin's face was somewhat pale as he looked at the unconscious Lao Zheng. Enduring the intense pain, Mu Lin also took out a handful of medicinal powder. He gritted his teeth and smeared it on the wound. Even he could not help but roll his eyes at the burning pain on his body. Chen Rong wiped his sweat and couldn't help but feel a lingering fear. Looking at the dissipating gangchis in the cave, he let out a breath with lingering fear. Su Chong looked at the cave with a serious expression. If these gangchis were the mechanism that protected the cave, then it would be too terrifying. Even the sovereign chi armor of a monarch emperor could be easily pierced through. He believed that even a true emperor cultivation warrior would find it very difficult to deal with. Dong! 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 Just as the few of them were silent, a loud sound came from the bronze coffin behind the stone platform. Then, under the shocked eyes of Su Chong and the others, a person whose body was almost invisible crawled out of the coffin with difficulty. After that, there was a second person, and then a third. The four mysterious men who looked exactly the same had disheveled hair, long black hair reaching to their waist, and a stiff expression on their faces. Their pupils were only white, and there were no clothes covering their bodies. Their bodies turned illusory, as if they had no physical souls. The four of them stared at Su Chong and the others outside the cave, and the whites of their eyes gradually turned red. When the four of them climbed out of the coffin, Cao Ying just happened to appear. When he saw the four of them, his facial expression changed instantly, and his voice trembled as he shouted, "Undead corpse guards!